welcome. We're so glad to see you today. My name is Misa Iwama. I'm the Director of Music Ministry. And for those who might want a visual description, I am on the shorter side. I'm Asian. I almost always wear black clothes, and I am today. I don't wear glasses. I'm here today with Nikki Denner, who's playing piano. Thank you for coming back, Nikki. It's so nice to have you here. And we are on the lands of the Lenape. I have a few announcements. One is that at 12:15 today, there's going to be a meeting for those people who are interested in learning about our partnership church visit to Baroque this summer. So you want to go downstairs after the service for that meeting. Next Sunday, there's going to be a connecting session for anyone who's new to Beacon or new and wants to learn more about Unitarian Universalism. And for that meeting, which is next week, you want to see Chris Boudin, who is standing in the back with a clipboard. You want to sign up for that. I want to let you know that we're starting this month of honoring Black history. And as you might be well aware, that is music history as well. So later in the service, there will be a song called Come Sunday by Duke Ellington. But for now, I will introduce Rosemary. It is Sunday.
Missy is passing out copies of the Beacon Covenant, if you haven't had one yet. Several people are, okay. I'll start my shtick and then we're going to read it. Good morning. My name is Rosemary Wright. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm your worship associate today. I am a white, older woman, brown hair, glasses, and a reddish sweater. We continue our service today by sharing our congregational covenant, which is how we aspire to be in relationship together. If you are visiting Beacon, please don't feel obliged to read it, or Reverend Robin would be glad to speak with you. We are a freely chosen faith. So if we can read it together, that'd be great. We share in our covenant, which is, love guides the congregation. Love calls us daily to acts of liberation grounded in anti-racism. We affirm that we live in the complexity of intersectionality and that building healthy and loving relationships is a spiritual practice, requiring both inward and outward focus. Thus, we covenant to listen deeply, speak compassionately, express gratitude, and embrace our unique diversity. We endeavor to communicate honestly and with compassion, particularly when we are in conflict. When we hurt one another, we will try to make amends, forgive and reconnect with an intent to repair, change, and grow. Our purpose is to be radically inclusive, feed the human spirit, and heal the world. In celebration of the common purpose that unites us, and with the aspiration of beloved community before us, we will do our best to abide by this covenant. Blessed be.
Our first hymn of the day is number 6 in the charcoal hymnal. Would you please rise in any way possible and join in singing? It's number 6. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I
I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to love.
We kindle the light of the chalice, illuminate history this hour. The power of presence, and a greater path of shared liberation before us. Come, let us worship. That is, consider what is of worth. Stories and inspiration of Black Unitarian Universalists. In this beloved faith we share and seek to live anew.
Good morning. I have a question for you. What brings you joy in life? Is it something you see or touch or taste or smell? Holler them out. Coffee. What? Nature. Somebody said babies? My dog? The grands. Love. Oh, love brings you joy. What was that one? Naps. I'm on you with that one. Family. See, for me, one of the things that brings me joy is cuddling up with a good book. Doesn't matter what time of day, just grab my favorite beverage of choice and hunker down for it with a story, especially if I can relate to it. This reading leads to my writing, which leads to one of my favorite UU superheroes, Miss Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. She's a word nerd like me. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was a household name in the 19th century. She was like a Kardashian, but not with the bad stuff. Not only was she the first African-American woman to publish a short story, but she was also an influential abolitionist, suffragist, and reformer. But life wasn't always easy for her. She was born in 1825, Frances Watkins, to free Black parents in the state of Maryland, which at the time was a slave state. Within 3 years, her parents had both passed away, and so she went to go live with her uncle and aunt in Baltimore, where they ran a school for free Black children. They indulged Frances's love of reading and stories, and by the time she was 14 and went out on her own, she started working as a housekeeper for a bookseller, which gave Nerd Girl even more heaven because they gave her free reign of not only the bookstore, but their own personal library. By the time she was 20 years old, she published her first book of poetry called Forest Leaves. In 1850, Congress passed a law allowing for the kidnapping, enslavement, and sale of any and all Black people in slave states. Didn't matter if they were free or not. Remember, Maryland was a slave state. So her uncle and aunt left and moved to Canada, and she took a job in Ohio. Frances Watkins became the first woman to teach at Union Seminary in Wilberforce, Ohio, which was controversial not only because she was a woman, but because she was a Black woman. She stayed there for 2 years and eventually moved to Pennsylvania, back to the East Coast, and moved in with the Stills. And if you know anything about the Underground Railroads, they were one of the major conductors of the Underground Railroad. And she used her salary to support people as they made their way from slavery to freedom. In 1854, she had a great opportunity by Maine's Anti-Slavery Society because they hired her to go around the Northeast presenting anti-slavery speeches and becoming one of the most famous speakers and authors of her time. And to give back to her community, she never charged black people admission. In 1860, the Civil War began, but it wasn't all bad for her because she met and married a gentleman named Fenton Harper, who had 3 children. He was a widower. They together had a daughter named Mary, and she took a break from speaking so she could spend time with her family. But by 1863, when the Civil War ended, Fenton had passed away, and so Frances had to return to the speaker circuit to support her family. As an educated, free black woman making a living wage, she could express the intersections of life like no one else before her, as a woman, as an African American, as an educator, and as someone in the middle class. She could afford to buy her own home, whereas many blacks in the country still were coming out of slavery and owned nothing. In 1866, the National Women's Rights Convention happened in Seneca Falls, New York, and she was invited, along with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, to give speeches in support of women getting the vote. Frances made it a point to say that black women have the double burden of dealing with not only racism, but sexism at the same time, and that suffrage had to include black women to be legitimate. This was one of the many things that caused the group to split into 2 factions, the all or nothing, meaning everybody everywhere gets the vote, or those who supported the 15th Amendment, which allowed black men the vote, which is the one that ended up ultimately passing. Frances was able to bridge both worlds that she lived in. The white world, where she presented her speeches and was able to rub elbows with influential people, as well as the black world, where she was born into. She had 2 memberships to 2 congregations, First Unitarian in Philadelphia and Mother Bethel AME Church in Philadelphia, where she taught Sunday school in both of them. She was a part of the RE program there. She died in 1911 at a ripe old age of 85. Throughout her life, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper offered her voice, her words, her money, her labor, and her privilege as an educated, free black woman to raise awareness of the plight of other black people, of women, and of poor people in this country. So can you do me a favor and help me remember her memory by telling her story and using my own power to speak and fight for those people who have less? Can you do that too? Yes. Here ends our time for all ages.
Good morning, Beacon. Good morning. My name is Sean Jordan, for anyone I have not yet met. I most typically get he, him pronouns, and I come in today with a dark blue sweater with a hidden little T-Rex on it, the delight of my 4-year-old, and a burgundy stole that indicates my role as a chaplain here in this community. As a chaplain, my role is to extend the spiritual care of this community, and we define spiritual care as intentional compassion through presence and listening. We recognize as chaplains that everybody needs care at some point in our lives, and we offer ourselves as a resource to this community to provide you with deep listening, and in that listening, hope to provide a foundation for your healing. If you're interested, I invite you to speak to me or any member of the ministry team to learn more, knowing, of course, that we hold all of these conversations in the strictest of confidence. And if you want to learn more, you can also read up in the Heal the World tab on the Beacon website. Another way that we extend the spiritual care of the community is by facilitating a weekly ritual of community candlelighting. Together, we light candles of joy, sorrow, and gratitude. This morning, we light a candle of strength and protection for those who continue to endure weather extremes caused by our changing climate, especially those in Southern California, where severe flooding is predicted to continue into the week. We light a candle for the life of Marquise Hudson, a 32-year-old Plainfield firefighter who last Friday tragically gave his life in service of his hometown while fighting a fire. Mayor Adrian O'Mapp of Plainfield said that Marquise's passing was like losing a son. And we hold Marquise's wife, 3 young children, his family, and firefighting siblings in our hearts. We light a candle in celebration of the first Sunday in Black History Month, acknowledging that the attention we place on Black history in this month must endure throughout our year. We light a candle to recognize Black History Month, a candle of sorrow for the wounds endured by communities of color across our history and for the unjust inequalities that persist even today: displacement of communities, housing discrimination, police brutality, denial of healthcare and education. We light a candle in remembrance of Amadou Diallo, who 25 years ago was killed by police while sitting on his front porch, unarmed and innocent, May we continue to hold he and his family in our hearts. And we light a candle of gratitude for those who have risen up in spite of these wounds, those who have lifted the light that guides us all toward a greater good, whose inspiration has echoed across generations from the likes of Reverend Dr. King to Justin Pearson and Justin Jones of the Tennessee Three. And lastly, we light a candle of joy for this community and the opportunity to come together with intention in this space, holding up our own inspirations of joy, sorrow, and gratitude. If you're joining virtually, I'd like to invite you now to take this time to light a candle on your home altar or share your reflections in the chat. And for those in the sanctuary, I invite you now to come forward to light a candle of your own.
sing with me as we go through this next song. Hold on just a little while longer. 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 Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. Sing on, just a little while longer. Sing on, just a little while longer. Sing on, just a little while longer. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. Fight on, just a little while longer. Fight on, just a little while longer. Fight on, just a little while longer. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right.
Good morning, Beacon. My name is Mia Morse, she, her. I'm an African-American woman with cropped hair and a big pink bow on today. We now share a litany of voices of Black Unitarians, Black Universalists, and Black Unitarian Universalists in honor of Black History Month. Your response will be, with your wisdom, we commit to beloved community. Let's try that together. With your wisdom, we recommit to beloved community. You want me to do Charlene's? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
Hello, beloved. I'm Abby Laney. I am as Riley would like to say, not that short, biracial girl. And our first reading is from Fannie Barrier Williams from 1855 to 1944. The hearts of the Afro-American women are too warm and too large for race hatred. Long suffering has so chastened them that they are developing a special sense of sympathy for all who suffer and fail of justice.
With your wisdom, we recommit to beloved community.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Macaulay Campbell. It's the first time I do this, so I'm a 6'4", mixed-race individual wearing a blue button-up with a green vest. So my reading is from Reverend Ethelred Brown, 1875-1956. Religion is not an opiate, but a stimulant, an incentive to noble deeds, and a sustaining power in the hour of crisis.
With your wisdom, we recommit to beloved community.
From Whitney Young, 1921 to 1971. Every man is our brother, and every man's burden is our own. Where poverty exists, all are poorer. Where hate flourishes, all are corrupted. Where injustice reigns, all are unequal. With your wisdom, we recommit to beloved community.
From Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, 1925 1825 to 1911, we are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul.
From Reverend Dr. Yvonne Sion, born in 1937 and still with us. We are in an era where conformity is expected, and there's a great deal of suspicion of those who don't conform, yet it is the nonconformists among us who push us beyond mediocrity to greatness.
From Reverend Marjorie Bowens Wheatley, 1946 to 2006. Affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, for me, means working to create places of worship where all who subscribe to a liberal approach to religion can not only feel welcome, but enter into worship settings that reflect the diverse cultural realities of we, the people. With your wisdom, we recommit to beloved community.
From Bishop Carlton Pearson, 1953 to 2023. Truth resides within each of us. I've come to believe that authentic truth is not so much learned or taught as remembered in the deepest recesses of the soul, the ultimate essence of the spirit of which we all partake.
From Alondria Williams, 1979 to 2020. We must embody the changes we wish to see and not just say that we believe in the changes. We must actually live the changes with every fabric of our being. If we believe in the promise of our faith, we must continue pushing forward.
Community. From Reverend Michael Slack, born 1973 and still with us. Being the man I imagined when I was a kid is also about how I share and hold space with people of every gender, sexual orientation, ability, race, income, and faith. Doing enough of my own work to know what I need for my own healing and wholeness, and being a voice for love and justice in the world, while also knowing when it's time to be quiet and listen. With your wisdom, we recommit to beloved community.
I'm going to try not to slip again. From Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, our current and 10th president. We are in control of what we do with our daily living. If we, each one of us, represent a missing remnant in the fabric of our collective future, then together we can lean into a possibility that we have yet to fully experience in human history, a collective wholeness, an unassailable good. So immerse yourself unapologetically in what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist in these days. Then go out into the world and live knowing that your faith matters. With your wisdom, we recommit to beloved community.
I want to thank Macaulay and Abby and Mia for sharing our litany, and for intern minister Pablo Vasquez for authoring it and putting it together. I'm Reverend Robin. My pronouns are she, her. I am an average height white woman who's middle-aged, and today wearing a mask, which indicates that I'm recovering from COVID. And although I want to share many things with you this day, that is not one of them. I'm really delighted and honored to be able to introduce our next speaker and guest with us this day, who is a colleague and a friend. This Sunday is the first of 3 Sundays for a special plate collection. All of our offering today and over the next 2 Sundays will go to the Sweetwater Cultural Center. And here to speak about the vital work and mission of the center is my friend and colleague, Owl.
Nin Jusinzi Kokos Ramapo, Nawalatumon Windak, Ato, Ramapo, Muncie, Lenape, Anishinaabe. So I come to you in the words of the Muncie language, the original language of these lands, and just introduce myself as Al of the Deer Clan, of the Ramapo people, who are the descendants of the original people of these lands, who are the Muncie people, of the larger Lenape people, which includes this region, of the Anishinaabe people, the larger region, now spreading up into Canada, the Midwest, and here in the Northeast. I find these land acknowledgements to be quite interesting. I had a colleague, Mike Najwan, he said it's almost like someone steals your car and then sees you, later on the road and says, hey man, that's a nice, I really thank you for this car you have, that I have now. It's a really nice car, but, but it is good to be acknowledged. And I hear that we're supposed to describe ourselves for people who may be visually challenged. I just wanted to say, as I said earlier, that I'm tall, dark, and handsome. Maybe not as tall as Macaulay, but I guess if I had high heels or big shoes, maybe might be that big. But I was saying earlier that when I didn't grow up in the region. My father grew up here, Ramapo, indigenous. And in Manhattan, I was thinking how arrogant these people are. I'm number one, I'm the best. And then I thought, well, my mother told me I was the most handsome, so, maybe I had the face only a mother could love. But then, isn't that true of all our mothers, all these babies? Each baby is the most beautiful baby to that mother, and so I think we need to get away from this Miss America syndrome, the most beautiful, second, third, I think we're all beautiful in our mother's eyes, So, I don't know, Robin, I'm a little bit upset with this program and bringing these ancestors in, because I went to school and law school, and we spent a lot of money on this, so I have a lot more reading to do. I don't know. How am I going to fit all this in with the Kardashians and the 45th president in his tweets? It's a lot of reading. But yeah, earlier I mentioned, and I'll try to keep it short. But it's almost like that Cecil B. DeMille film. You have the cast of thousands when we talk about our ancestors and all the people that helped us to get where we are. But I'm a descendant of Samson Occam, who was one of the first Indian or indigenous preachers in the mid-1700s. And he was actually one of the founders of Dartmouth College. Unfortunately, it took a turn that he didn't like, because when he was in England raising money, his partner not only did not provide for his family, but moved the college from Connecticut to New Hampshire and changed the focus from educating indigenous people to wealthy white children. And so, but I think that's a lesson for us now, because we still have that mission to kind of provide space for education for all of our youth, and also how we can come together and bridge, different cultures. So we owe a great debt to the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people at Standing Rock. We started this Split Rocks Sweetwater Prayer Camp in solidarity with Standing Rock because of threats, to our water. And there at Standing Rock, they had the phrase, Mini Wachoni, water is life, Mini Wachoni. In our Muncie language, we would say, Mbi Mbumasa Wakanam, we walk in the ways of water. And remember looking at the map coming down here, you know, the Passaic River is actually the Ramapo River further down. So our waters are all connected. In Ringwood, as you may know or may not, there was massive pollution there, which is the headwaters of the Wanakee Reservoir, which supplies water for, millions of people in the state, over 1 million people. So these are very important issues that we are dealing with at the Sweetwater Cultural Center, which kind of emerged from this movement. And there's two major issues that we're all dealing with now. One is Indian Point, the nuclear power plant on the Hudson River. I think sometimes people forget that, Palisades, that's New Jersey, so it's not just New York. And then we have a major frac gas pipeline that's being proposed for the Northeast, starting in the Ramapo Mountains, called Project Maple. And they want to dramatically expand the pipeline infrastructure to the Northeast. So, these are important issues to keep an eye on. So Sweetwater Cultural Center was founded really out of a vision by Chief Perry, Dwayne Perry, and it is to give a voice to the voiceless. So, we heard voices that are not really heard. I mean, people have voice, our ancestors, and now it's just that we need to listen to them. So Sweetwater Cultural Center, giving a voice to the voiceless, providing a space for really education of ourselves, youth, coming together to deal with these important issues. So, I would just end with a prayer in Muncie, and I'll say it and then I'll just explain it briefly. Anishi Kisha Lamokwang, Anishi Kwachi Manitou, Elamiliang, Gaganai Ki, Walk Imbi, Walk Kashung, Walk Tindao. And that is, thank you who created us from thought. Thank you, Great Spirit, for giving us our earth, our Mother Earth, our waters, wind, and fire. And it's a recognition that what we most need in the world today, we actually already have. I mean, it's our waters, our air, the land here. So if we can remember that, I think we can go forward in a good way. So just want to thank you all for your generous support and the continuing education, even though I felt I spent all that money and that time, and now I have more to learn. But thank you for all this. Anashik, thank you.
Anashiko, we thank you. We thank you for your presence here, for the work and mission of Sweetwater Cultural Center. And thank you, beloved, for your generosity, as our morning offering will now be most gratefully received.
Come Sunday, oh come Sunday, that's the day. Lord, dear Lord above, God Almighty, God of love, please
Thank you so much, Misa. Thank you, Nikki. It is wonderful to have you back. The year, beloved, is 1866. It's just 1 year after slavery is abolished with the 13th Amendment. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, as we heard from Jermaine, is an established and well-known name in the American household. A suffragist and an abolitionist, she attends the National Women's Rights Convention in New York. It is the same year that Susan B. Anthony, also a Unitarian, delivers an impassioned speech for the rights of women to vote. But Susan B. Anthony has a sharp disagreement with Frances Ellen Watkins Harper and with Frederick Douglass. Anthony believes right for white women to vote should come before the rights of freed black men, and that the struggles should be separate struggles. Along with Douglass, argues that the two struggles are one suffrage movement, and that they should stay together as one movement. That is when Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, after Susan B. Anthony's cry for the rights of women, takes the stage and says the following: I feel I am something of a novice upon this platform. Born of a race whose inheritance has been outrage and wrong, most of my life has been spent in battling against these wrongs. But I did not feel as keenly as others that I had these rights in common with other women, which are now demanded. About 2 years ago, I stood within the shadows of my home. A great sorrow had fallen upon my life. My husband had died suddenly, leaving me, a widow with 4 children. I tried to keep my children together, but my husband died in debt. And before he had been in his grave 3 months, the administrator had swept the very milk cracks and wash tubs from my hands. I was a farmer's wife and made butter for the Columbus market, but what could I do? They had swept it all away. They left me one thing, and that was a looking glass. Had I died instead of my husband, how different would have been the result? By this time, he would have had another wife, it is likely, and no administrator would have gone into his house, broken up his home, and sold his bed, and taken away his means of support. She concludes, we are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul. Of course, history tells us plainly that Douglass and Harper were right in their assessment of the suffrage movement. The women's suffrage movement would take another 50 years for women to get the right to vote. Neither Susan B. Anthony nor Frances Ellen Watkins Harper would live to see that day. The legacy that Frances Ellen Watkins Harper left not only transformed Unitarian Universalism, but the world. Nearly a century after she spoke those words at the Women's Convention, a young minister completing his doctorate in theology in Boston came upon her words and changed them slightly for a sermon. You might have heard of him, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He transformed her words into the quote we know so well, inspired by her life and her teaching. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one indirectly affects all directly. This month we celebrate and honor Black History Month, but in truth, Black History Month is every month. It is a time, yes, of course, to acknowledge the pain and persistence of racism, but it should be moreover a time of celebrating Black history, which is inextricably tied to the history of this country and the history of Unitarian Universalism. celebrating the achievements, the contributions from Black musicians and composers, visual artists, poets, authors, scientists, inventors, engineers, I can't get too excited with this mask on, politicians, philosophers, and leaders of social movements for progress. We celebrate today in this inescapable network of mutuality the history of Black Unitarians, Black and post-merger in 1961, Black Unitarian Universalists. Now, when I first became a Unitarian Universalist, I barely heard any stories of Black UU history. You would have thought that Black Unitarian Universalists were somehow new to the faith in the 20th century only. And yet I heard extensive tales about Susan B. Anthony, who arguably was less engaged in Unitarianism than Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was. Now, over time, I became aware of stories in Unitarian Universalism where Black Unitarians and Black Universalists and Black UUs were pushed out of our faith. But the beauty and strength and promise of Unitarian Universalism was diminished by what artist Lauren Hill calls my own miseducation. I was taught by a feminist biblical scholar that when reading the Bible, we ministers had a responsibility to read the silences. Elizabeth Schussler-Fiorenza taught us to read for what wasn't spoken in the text, who was silent and yet still speaking. Reading Paul's letters about the conduct of women, well, you might ask, why might Paul have had to address the conduct of women in the early Christian church? What might Christian women have been saying and doing that caused such a reactive and defensive posture in dear Paul? It surely wasn't that women didn't exist in the early Christian church. It certainly wasn't that women weren't in leadership in the early Christian church. It certainly wasn't that women weren't among the first disciples in the early Christian church. The same is true of the history in so many of our school books. Our students have to read the silences. Now, despite how progressive we can be, the same hermeneutic, which is just a $2 seminary word for how you know what you know, the way you look at it, that same hermeneutic needs to be applied to our faith. Because telling history is a powerful tool. Storytelling is a sacred role in many cultures. In many of our families, Jermaine talked about how she loves stories. And many of us know storytellers in our communities. In West Africa, they call the storyteller a griot. It's almost like a healer, because they understand that the power of storytelling is not just transmission of fact or record, but it is the shaping of a generation, a community, and a future. Black Unitarians, Black Universalists, and Black UUs shaped and are shaping what is Unitarian Universalism today. And as my colleague and UU leader Paula Cole-Jones says, who was raised in the multiracial All Souls Church in Washington, D.C., a Unitarian Universalist congregation, Robin, not every UU's experience is of a predominantly white UU congregation. I grew up knowing, always knowing, a multicultural, multiracial Unitarian Universalism. A long-standing tradition in our faith is the importance of education equity. We believe in education. We have fought for public education. We've been among the reformers trying to increase access to public education. Part of education is not just what happens in a school, in a classroom, with a teacher. A part of education is the telling our own truth as a faith, learning it, cultivating it, seeking it out. Having the hermeneutic, the ethics, to wonder when all you're given is a volume of one voice of a faith, as progressive and diverse as ours, to have the courage to raise your hand and ask, where's the rest of the history? Right now in our state and across our country, education is under attack, isn't it, beloved? Now, you might wonder why. Why are Moms for Liberty showing up at school boards? Why is education under attack? Because in the history of humanity, education is a primary way to take power over people. Take away their education. It is why teaching enslaved persons was a criminal offense during slavery. It is why, upon the complete shutdown of Reconstruction, that schools, like the thousands built by Booker T. Washington and Julius Rosenwald, were often burned to the ground shortly after construction. Education is the key to liberation in most movements for social change. It is also the greatest weapon. As scholar and author Willie Baptist reminds us, ask what the white students learned during slavery in the United States. Ask what German students learned during Hitler's reign. Ask what students in North Korea are learning right now under Kim Jong-un. Education, including the telling of history, is a tool that can easily be weaponized. Now, as progressives, I know, beloved, you are already and will continue to push hard against the attacks on public education. But I want to call us to also a deeper spiritual grounding, to be storytellers, the griot, to understand and embody the healing and transformative power and call of sharing our histories, to passing on fuller histories, her stories, and our stories. It is our responsibility now, all of us, to learn and seek out the history, and what's more, to share it, to fight for its veracity in our schools, and expect that Black history be more than a month and more than a short essay on Harriet Tubman. Here in our congregation, it's, yes, the story of Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. It's also the story of Unitarian Fannie Barrier Williams, who was a women's rights activist and the first African-American woman to be admitted to the Chicago Women's Club. She worked with Jane Addams in founding Hull House. It is also the history of Professor Bill Jones, who was a foundational writer in 20th century humanism and a Unitarian Universalist. Jones, who is the creator of the concept community of communities, and who is leading our faith in changing all of our principles, how we articulate who we are as a faith. It is the story of Edna Mae Griffin, who was the first Black woman to be on the UUA board of directors, and who was an incredibly important civil rights activist, who Reverend Dr. Kimaya Rockman, author of The Rough Side of the Mountain, which is an anthology just published on Black Unitarian Universalist women, she calls Griffin the Rosa Parks of Des Moines, Iowa. It's the history of Alondria Williams, the first Black UU to hold the highest volunteer office in our association, that of moderator. And it is present history of Mia Morris, Beacon member who led the UU Metro New York district in one of the most significant shifts to regionalization in our association, who is right now on the Religious Education Credentialing Committee for our entire association, who's president, who's president of the board of UU Faith Action New Jersey and co-leader of our intern minister Pablo's internship committee. The next generation of religious leaders in Unitarian Universalism are largely going to be able to say that their ministry and leadership was touched by, informed, and shaped by the leadership and wisdom of Mia Morris. And the only reason she's not still here in the second service is because she's at an event talking about the organization this congregation started that she's helping to lead, Beacon Hope and Equity Center. Unitarian Universalism is not a white faith that is suddenly waking up to anti-racism. It has always been a multicultural, multiracial, multi-religious faith formed by both the voices of those at the margins and those who held some of the highest seats of power. It is the paradox and compelling truth of our origins, one that births accountability and hope, reparations and transformation. And telling the history, learning the history, and sharing the history is also about gifting a future story to a generation that needs to hear, you can, you will, and we shall. It is a faithful declaration, beloved, against institutional and systemic defamation of who gets to be in the future story of this faith. It is at our core the decision to overturn the oppression of invisibility. And like those biblical stories, the authors may have silenced the women, the enslaved person, the queer person, the elderly person, but we know that they lived, that they spoke, that they taught, and that they shaped a generation, whether it was recorded or not, and that they still can speak. In a forgetful, fast-paced world, we must remember. In an unholy, silenced space, we speak the names and tell the sacred stories. In a hopeless time, we shine the light of a faith, passed as a flame, generation to generation. It is our turn now, beloved. May we be faithful keepers of that flame entrusted to us. So may it be. Amen.
Our closing song is I'm on My Way. So instead of reading this from the hymnal, we're going to do it as a call and response, meaning I'm going to sing a line, and then all you have to do is echo it back. And it goes like this. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. That's good. I'm on my way to the freedom land. Sing it together. On my way, glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way. Yeah, so it's a lot of echoing back and forth, and then the last thing we'll say together, and then we'll do that one line together. All right, I invite you to rise in any way possible and join in singing. I'm on my way, I'm on my way to the freedom land, to the freedom land. I'm on my way, to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. Together, I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way. All right, I asked my neighbor. I asked my neighbor, woman, go with me, come and go with me. I asked my neighbor, come and go with me. I asked my neighbor, come and go with me. Together, I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, and I won't turn back. I'm on my way, glory, hallelujah. I'm on my way.
Thank you, Misa. Thank you, beloved. Would you take hands with one another for our closing blessing? And Abby, I'm going to hand you the chalice because I have no way to blow it out. And now, beloved, may the love that is our source and ultimate return hold you and animate you and lead you in the ways of love, light, and liberation until the winds of favor bring us back together once more. Blessed may you be. Amen.